Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Dana Deighton, and I'm the Director of Communications and Engagement here at the Melanoma Research Alliance, and I will be moderating this webinar. We'd like to thank you all for joining this MRA Meet Up, TIL Therapy for Melanoma, a patient perspective and what's new in research. Another in a series of webinars designed to engage, educate, and most importantly, empower patients and caregivers. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Iovance Biotherapeutics, for making this possible. Before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping details we'd like to go over. By joining this webinar, you understand that this will be a public event and recorded as a resource for others that will live on the MRA website. Portions may also be shared via MRA social media channels. The content should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please consult your healthcare provider about any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Please keep your line on mute and other devices silenced. Also, please be respectful of the experiences, opinions, and questions of others. As mentioned, today we're talking about one of the most exciting new treatments for advanced melanoma, tumor-infiltrating lymphocyte therapy, or TIL. With me today, there are two remarkable people who have both been part of this story firsthand. Dr. Ravi Amaravadi is a physician scientist at the University of Pennsylvania, where he leads a melanoma research program and has been involved in TIL therapy since its very early days. We also have Bob Ricker, a patient who underwent TIL therapy and is here today as a complete responder, meaning his cancer is gone, which is just the best news. Bob and Dr. Amaravadi, we are so happy to have you and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
are welcome. All right, so since we have lots of territory to cover today, we are going to jump right in. And Dr. Amaravadi, if you have anything to add about yourself or anything before you kick us off with getting us started on this journey, please let us know.
Sure. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me to this webinar. And it's a real pleasure to be here with Bob, a dear old patient of mine, and here in Melanoma Awareness Month. So how appropriate, right? And I'm a medical oncologist at the University of Pennsylvania. I see patients with melanoma and also non-melanoma skin cancer, really advanced skin cancer. And I also run a laboratory and perform clinical trials. And I'm in charge of the scientific director of the Tara Miller Melanoma Center, as well as a large grant called a SPORE grant. I'm also associate director of the Abramson Cancer Center for Translational Research. So it's a real pleasure to kind of give my insight on the TIL procedure along with Bob's.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And you are such a busy physician and scientist. We really appreciate you taking this time with us. Bob, would you like to add a little bit about yourself?
Sure, be happy to. My wife and I live in the southern part of Delaware. We are both business owners. We own a hardware store, an outdoor power equipment dealership, and a rental store in a little town called Millsboro. We've bought it from my wife's father about 40 years ago. So we're actually working on the third generation of it now. I have been in our local volunteer fire company for 52 years, where I've served as past chief. I also work in my spare time for the Delaware State Fire School, specializing in vehicle rescue to new firefighters that are coming through and experienced firefighters as well. So it's awfully nice to be here, and I thank all of you for the invitation.
Thank you, Bob. I think you two are like two of the busiest gentlemen I've come across in a while.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, let's dive in. I'm sorry.
Oh,
No?
nothing.
Okay. Dr. Amaravadi, let's start at the beginning. Can you please explain what TIL therapy actually is for those people who have not come across it before, and in a way that someone without a medical background can understand?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So TIL stands for tumor-infiltrating lymphocytes. So when a melanoma tumor forms, your immune system is really your best defense against that. And the lymphocytes are a part of your white blood cells. They try to get into the tumor and attack it. They try to infiltrate the tumor. And the most important part of the lymphocytes are the killer T cells. So if you have a lot of killer T cells in your tumor and they're growing, they're proliferating, and they can recognize the tumor, well, they can wipe out the tumor. But the sad reality is that when patients progress, meaning their tumors are growing, it really indicates the tumor has figured out a way to stun those T cells. So they're in there, the killer T cells are in there, but they're stunned. So what the TIL procedure does is it takes out a tumor, a surgical resection of one tumor, and then in a lab, the lymphocytes are pulled out, they're purified, and then they're expanded in such a way, perfect conditions for the killer T cells to grow out. And using this method, you can start with a few hundred lymphocytes and end up with billions of TIL product. And if this takes about 4 to 6 weeks, so there is a waiting period. But if you meet that threshold that the FDA has set, then the product is ready to be given to the patient. The patient is then admitted to the hospital and gets a week of high-dose chemotherapy to make room for all of these billions of cells. And then the TIL product is infused, and then the patient gets 3 days of a cytokine called interleukin 2 or IL-2. That is, in some ways, the hardest part of the whole procedure because it makes you feel very sick. It's also can be dangerous as far as your organs, and so it needs to be done in a certified center, not just in any hospital.
Thank you. That was really great. So I know a little bit about TIL, and not everybody qualifies for them, right? Who is the right patient for TIL therapy?
Right. So TIL therapy is currently approved for patients with stage 4 melanoma or unresectable stage 3 melanoma who have already been treated with immunotherapy and the tumors have grown. So immunotherapy is given as first line treatment, and then the TIL can be given as second line treatment. Now, if the patient has a BRAF mutation, they really have to get the BRAF and MEK inhibitor, the targeted therapy, before they can get TIL. So TIL is now currently approved for second or third line treatment for stage 4 melanoma. And not every patient who meets those criteria will be eligible for TIL because, as I mentioned, it's a hard procedure. And so the oncologist has to do certain testing to make sure that the patient qualifies, that they're fit enough to undergo this treatment. Secondly, if the patient's tumors are growing very rapidly, it may be very difficult to make it to the actual treatment because it takes weeks to get there. And so that may not be an appropriate patient to sign up for TIL. And the third reason why many patients don't get TIL is that they just don't want to do it. And it's a patient choice that they don't want to go through all of this. So each patient's journey is individual, as you'll hear about Bob's journey, and you just have to make that decision for yourself. All of that being said, the number of patients getting TILs is ramping up exponentially, I would say now, as it's being rolled out in many different hospitals around the country.
Great, thank you so much. So, a couple of words popped out at me here: journey and approval. And while patients are on their own journey and have to get approved for it, TIL therapy itself had to get approved by the FDA. And that too was quite a journey. Can you tell us what that took and how we eventually got down this path to make it an available treatment?
Right. So this really started in the 1980s with researchers at the National Cancer Institute. Really, Steve Rosenberg and his group pioneered TILs and really started at the very beginning. Each one of these steps had to be optimized, and it took nearly 30 years for it to become a commercial drug, meaning that it can be used outside of the NCI and can be done in many different hospitals. And it's really a testament to the importance of federally funded research, that this came out of the National Cancer Institute, and now it's being really, it just got approved in Canada, and it's going to soon be approved in Australia. So really around the world, it's being used.
Yeah, that's so exciting. And on top of that, it's not just being moved, or I'm sorry, used for melanoma, right? It has implications for other cancer indications.
Yes, it's still early days, but there are clinical trials of TIL in non-small cell lung cancer, in certain gynecological cancers, and in head and neck cancer. So we're very excited and hopeful that this can improve those cancers as well.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. Bob, I'd like to hear a little bit from you now. Can you please tell us a little bit about your story? Take us back to the beginning, when you were first diagnosed and what your treatment journey looked like before TIL.
Sure. I I had developed a small lump on my right leg in the area of the shin. And I saw it and never really paid any mind to it. I assumed that it was a piece of asphalt that I had in my shin from, I know this isn't right, but from weed eating in a pair of shorts. During my annual physical at my doctor's, I mentioned to him, what's the chances of you taking a look at this? Because I think it's a piece of asphalt I got under my skin. He took a look at it and we went in the other room and he says, I'm going to take it out. He says, it's not asphalt and it's not good. And he took it out, he sent it away, and he called me back a few days later and says, you need to go get looked at. He said, it's cancer and you need to get it taken care of. I went to our local hospital here in Southern Delaware, BB Hospital, and I met up with the doctor there, and she was very nice, and we started some treatments. We started with the immunotherapy, and a local cancer doctor down here removed the area around what my doctor had taken away. And they had assumed that we had it pretty well licked, and it came back within a matter of 3 or 4 weeks. We continued on with the immunotherapy for, I'm going to say, about 6 months or so. When my doctor down here came to me and she said, honestly, I'm a breast cancer doctor. I think you need to go somewhere and get a specialist to take a look at it. So I asked her, I said, where to? And she said, UPenn. And I said, I'm on my way. I was, out of the grace of God, I got Dr. Amaravadi's office, and they said, sure, come right up. A few days later, and Teresa and I went to UPenn and met up with the folks from Dr. Amaravadi's office. And we started some different therapies. We started some experimental therapies, and they kind of sort of worked and they kind of sort of didn't. Dr. Karakoussis, who was a surgeon at UPenn, had removed another one that had come up. And not long after that, another one came up. So Dr. Amaravadi had mentioned to me that there was this therapy that was out there, this treatment, but they weren't quite ready for it yet. And it still had some, I think FDA approvals had to be met or something. And so we went on for a few months, and finally we tried the MEC therapy, the Mectovy and Mechanic, I think it was. And then we went up for a visit, and it really wasn't getting better. And that's when he told me, he said, look, he said, UPenn is thinking about doing this TIL therapy. He says, I can't tell you we can do it. He says, there's a lot to it. There's a lot that UPenn had to do in preparation for approvals. And finally, he called me up and said, we're approved. And we'd like you to be the first patient that gets it. And to be honest with you, at that point, I was scared enough that I would have probably done anything. So I said, sure, I'll be happy to help. In the back of my mind, I thought, if this is new and this is something and it works, being a fireman, I'm thinking, well, good, because this will help a lot of other people out as well. So, and then we began the process, and it was the one thing I can say to any patients that are out there listening, that it was the unknown about this that was the scariest part. I trusted Dr. Amaravadi 100% and all of his staff and all the folks at UPenn. But it was the waiting. It was that period of time in there where we were seeing whether or not I was the good candidate and whether or not the lymph node that they had taken out was in fact going to be successful in growing the other cells that they were going to put back in. The rest of it was no walk in the park either, but I can assure you it was well worth everything.
Well, I love that. And as I'm sure you too have probably heard before, in oncology, a lot of people say the only certainty is uncertainty. So I can certainly identify with everything you said there. Dr. Amaravadi, a couple of questions for you. It can't be a light decision to offer something so new to a patient. What type of thought process, from your perspective, goes into this when you approach a patient about it?
Oh, absolutely. So we are quite used to offering new treatments. We're constantly doing clinical trials. What was new about this for us was the commercial approval process was different. To be accredited as a site required really site inspections and so forth. So that's why it took a while for us to get TIL activated. But one of the things that we were very comfortable with was our cell therapy group has been doing CAR T cells, for instance, for years, nearly a decade. So we were really excited to start with Bob, especially because when I talked to him in the clinic and I explained the dangers of the TIL, um, he had that quick reaction of let's do it, and as an oncologist, patients that are listening may not know this, but we love that feeling when the patient's like let's go for it, because we're now on this shared mission, right? We're going to do this, and yes, there's uncertainty, but we're going to do it together, and that's really a special feeling that you know it's a great start to the journey, if you will.
Thank you. Bob, so you got started, like you wanted to make it happen yesterday, and you guys got the ball rolling. Can you share a little bit with other patients and caregivers what the process was actually like? Because that's kind of the big black box for a lot of people. They haven't heard of too many people having gone through this. What was the harvesting like? What was the rest of the experience like?
Um, I have to start preface my comments by saying that it may not have been so easy had it not been for the staff at University of Pennsylvania Hospital. I know people that have been through surgeries and whatnot. I've been an EMT my whole entire life, so I've spent a lot of time in hospitals, but I've never seen the amount of dedication to patients that the UPenn folks have had, which helped me quite a bit make the decisions to do this. The night that we were sitting home, and we're about 2 hours and 15 minutes away from the hospital. And the night that we were sitting here, and Teresa and her brother were here, and he was going to take us up. And we sat here, and I kept wanting to call up there and go, okay, when do we have a room ready? And we waited and waited, waited. It was later in the evening, it was 8ish or so, when they finally called and they said, come on up. So we did. We got checked in. I was amazed at the size of University of Pennsylvania Hospital. That just blew me away. And the kindness of everybody that I met, from the guy who did the parking to the guy that showed us where the elevator was, just wonderful folks, which helped a lot because I knew that I was going in on uncharted waters, which was a little scary. And the process itself wasn't all that horrible until I got to that cotton picking interleukin 2. And that was, woo. The chemotherapy wasn't that bad, to be honest with you. I do know that the hallway in the University of Pennsylvania Hospital is 1/4 of a mile all the way around it. And you had mentioned something a little while ago about prepping for it. I can't tell you how important it is to patients to get yourself physically ready to go through this. All I did was walk, lifted weights at the firehouse, did some stuff like that, but I walked a lot. And I changed my eating habits and ate a little bit better than I had. But the actual process was that chemotherapy wasn't horrible till the morning I was in the shower, taking a shower, and all my hair fell out. That was a shocker. But the girls that were there, they were, apparently I wasn't the only person this ever happened to. So they were pretty funny about it. They were saying, "Oh, you'll be just fine." The day that the folks came in with the cells was a bit shocking, and the girls there at the hospital prepped me and told me what was going to happen and said, "Look, they're going to come in with this machine with all these frozen cells in it. They have to thaw them out. We're going to put them in, and it takes a few hours to get it done." And it did. That was fine. The interleukin 2 was rough, but it wasn't something, again, without those girls in that hospital, and Dr. Amaravadi, his staff, it would never have been so good. Wasn't good at all, but they made it palatable. I know I'm a 52-year past chief, but I was chicken. I was scared to death, and they held my hand through the whole thing. And it was a wonderful. I learned so much about people being in University of Pennsylvania Hospital as well.
That is so nice to hear. It's always easier when you feel like everybody is rowing in the same direction and they're there to support you. That's really wonderful. That wait to, get through the cell manufacturing process. Did you have moments of doubt? What was going through your mind then?
No, I didn't have any moments of doubt. I had 100% faith in the folks at UPenn. And I knew that I was healthy enough. I knew that the cancer had grown to the point where this process was probably needed and necessary to do. So
Yeah.
it was just the time that passed. I wanted it to go faster, but
Hmm.
but when Dr. Amaravati notified me and said, "You're good. We're going forward," and we set the date.
So if we get to that date, walk us through the infusion process. What was that like?
That was odd. Um, Being a fireman, and we find ourselves in hazmat, hazardous material situations from time to time. And we have a county hazmat team that comes in. When these folks walked in with the gowns and the booties and the gloves and the mask and the goggles and stuff. I'm going like, oh Lord, what are these folks going to do? And
You're the
they had
hazmat.
to, yeah. Well, in the fire service, we call those body bags with windows, but they had to warm the cells up. And I kept asking the girls, what are they doing? And the girls explained it. They said that they're frozen. They have to thaw them out. It's going in the port. The going in the port was odd because it was cold, but honest to golly, that wasn't that bad. They just came by. I can't remember. It was every 4 hours or 6 hours. I can't recall. They came
How
in and did it.
how long did the total infusion take?
I think they did it all in a day or maybe a day and a half. They had it.
Okay.
It was a few, I can't remember exactly. It was a few hours in between them.
Okay, great. And then how long did you have to wait until you got to your first scan? And then tell us a little bit about that.
I think it was my first visit back was about a week later.
Hmm.
And then I think it was a month. Then I think it was a month that I had a scan, and or maybe a little longer.
Yeah, we try to do a 6 week scan after
Yeah,
discharge or after the TIL procedure.
Okay.
And yeah, I remember Bob, you came back with he had a tumor on his leg that was basically gone.
yeah,
Wow.
And then but also his hair was basically gone. So he was a very different guy and still tired, I think, right? Am I right? That
yeah.
it took
That
a while
that
to recover.
that was one of the things that I found a little different. Um,
Mhm.
it took, I'm going to say, 60 days or 90 days being at home and doing a little bit of things, going to work for an hour or so, that sort of thing, until my, I shouldn't say the fog lifted, but that's about how it felt. Was I could, I'm assuming it was the medicine that was working its way out of the system, and I started feeling better, and I started being able to think and rationalize things better. Uh, and being in the hospital for that period of time, it took a while. I was very, very weak, um, doing stuff around the house. We have a long hallway in the house, and I would walk it 4 or 5 times a day.
Hmm.
And I'd walk, down the hallway once and have to stop and sit down, catch my breath, and go again. That took a while, and that was odd for me. Normally, I bounce back from stuff relatively quickly, but it took a while, even when I got home, that I would go outside and walk, and I would walk for, I don't know, a few hundred feet, and I'd have to stop, catch my breath, think about it a little bit, and then walk a little bit more. It took a while to get, I think, all the drugs and whatnot out of my system so that I felt normal again.
But I think it did help that that first scan was a complete response, which
Hmm.
we don't see that a lot in second or third line melanoma. And when we do, it is a time to celebrate. It is not routine. It is, a great thing. And I think that will pump up your energy once you get that result. It's not the end of scanning, so we still have to be vigilant for a recurrence, but uh, this was clear. It was shrinking in the hospital. And not only that, we had some research studies going on, and we were actually monitoring Bob's blood almost daily for his T cells in his blood. And we have a way to do that with our colleague Alex Wong, melanoma specific T cells. And we saw them go up after he got the IL-2, even though he hated the IL-2. It was a good thing that he got it. And when we see that connection that it is actually shrinking, the tumor is shrinking at the same time that we see the T cells going up in the blood. So it's a very happy time.
Yeah, absolutely. And like complete response is just not something that, you can run away from. You got to just celebrate every minute for sure, which it sounds like you did. And I'm glad you got that extra little boost after that of energy. So a lot of patients probably have had, some trepidation into, should I consider this? Should I not? What would you tell them, just as a mentor, somebody that's walked this walk?
I, I would, I would not hesitate a moment. Um, don't waste any time at all. Get physically fit, get your get your brain going the right direction. And I honestly believe anybody can get through this. I said to Dr. Amaravadi at one point when I was going through the IL-2 portion of this thing, I says, I don't know how anybody who isn't relatively physically active could go through this because it wasn't that I was sick. You could physically feel this coming. I would, this is weird, but my right shoulder would start shaking and I would get cold, very cold. And I just pushed the little button and one of the nurses just opened up the shade and I went, here we go. And in they came, just like the cavalry. At one point, they're trying to get my vital signs on me and it wasn't working. They were trying their hearts out. But I was just shaking so hard that they couldn't do it. And I kept apologizing to them. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. They said, it's okay. It's not you. It's the drug. You're fine. Um, and we went through it. And as I recall, I think was originally scheduled for 6 of the IL-2 treatments. And I can't remember if I did 4 or 5. I think I did 4.
You did 4.
Yeah, I did
And
4.
that's an important thing. That's also a source of tension, anxiety for patients is the IL-2 dosing, which is really more of an art than a science. It's every dose has to be chosen whether you can give the next one based on the reaction that the patient has. And there are patients that will not get 6 doses. Um, they may not even get 2 doses, but that's okay. And it's important that patients understand that and not get so worked up that their anxiety becomes the reason why we're not giving the next dose, you know. So that's something that is actually an area of research that could be done in the hospital on how to improve um, the patient experience
Hmm.
during that IL-2 infusion.
I love that idea because one of the questions I was just going to ask is, just like our iPhones, like there's a next gen around the corner of every technology we have now. So there's probably going to be a next gen of TIL therapy that hopefully is a little less harsh on patients. Bob, as a patient yourself, any guidance or kind of, just words of wisdom you would share with researchers or the companies that are investing in this type of therapy?
I think it's important for the physicians and the patients to understand that first one I was more scared really than sick. The first one was the one that lasted the longest as far as the shaking and the tremors and whatnot. There was a medicine, and I can't remember what the name of it was, but the girls had sent down to the pharmacy for it that they gave me that during the first infusion, it was about 30 minutes, I think, and everything started calming down. The next infusion that I got, the girls had the medicine up there. So we didn't have to wait for the pharmacy. We didn't have to, they were ready to go. And then the third one, when I pushed the button and opened it up and I gave them the thumbs up, here we go. She walked in and she patted her pocket like this, said, I got it right here. I said, okay. So to let me know that we're going to give you this.
That's
So,
great.
and I believe, and Dr. Amaravadi, you can correct me if I'm not right, but I think they tried a couple of things with me, like they would give me that injection of that medicine right after, or maybe right before, or at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah, we can once we know what the reaction's going to be,
Hmm.
we can gauge the side effect management. But really, the next generation, well, first of all, the next step for TIL is to test whether it can be given in the front line. And there is a clinical trial that is randomizing patients with new stage 4 melanoma to TIL plus a PD-1 and immunotherapy versus immunotherapy alone. And that randomized phase 3 study is a very important study to see if this is safe enough and effective enough in the first line. But to get to all of the things that Bob's talking about, can we improve the TIL so that we don't need to give the IL-2,
Hmm.
And so that gets into genetically modified TIL. With gene engineering, we can now either delete a gene or add a gene. And both of those approaches are being tested. One is to delete PD-L1, PD-1 on the T cells, and that would make them better, less likely to be exhausted. And then the next one is to add a different technology where the IL-2-like protein called interleukin 15 is put on the surface of the TIL so that it can just self-stimulate and basically grow without the IL-2. So there are other approaches that are being developed in the laboratory, but these are the two that are already um, in clinical trials.
Wow, thank you. That's really great. So, um, other than TIL, though, are there other T cell strategies that are out there? Because it sounds like a very active area that could be
Yeah.
manipulated
So
into treatment.
the way that oncology works is that one approval opens the door for a new paradigm. The
Hmm.
paradigm is cell therapy for
Hmm.
melanoma. Cell therapy has been there for lymphoma and myeloma. These are liquid malignancies, but not for solid malignancies. CAR T cells have worked for liquid malignancies, but they have not really worked for solid malignancies, with a few exceptions. Now, TIL is the first approved therapy, cell therapy for a solid tumor in melanoma. And that leaves the door open for T cell therapy in general. So a
Hmm.
couple of examples, there's a product that's called a TCRT, which is basically, instead of doing a surgery, you're taking blood from the patient and removing T cells from the blood, and then genetically modifying those T cells to express a receptor against a protein that's on the melanoma called PRAME. And so this is potentially a more specific form of T cell therapy that will go into the tumor very specifically if the tumor has PRAME, and most melanoma patients have that PRAME protein.
Okay.
So that's one. Another one are bispecific T cell engagers, which are basically antibodies that have two arms, one that's going to pull the T cell, one that's going to pull the tumor cell, and it's going to bring them together. That's being tested. And finally, we're not giving up on CAR T cell.
Hmm.
At Penn, we have a program developing a CAR T cell for melanoma.
That's exciting. I always love to hear that there's just, more tools in the toolbox if you need them, right?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. All right, so let's just switch the topic a little bit and talk about clinical trials because that's exactly how we got to where we are today for TIL therapy, for CAR T cell therapy. So maybe you can help me here a little bit, Bob. Did you participate in a clinical trial? Was one offered? What do you think about trials and their potential for
I
patients?
I honestly think that I was, and Dr. Amaravati can correct me if I'm wrong, I think I was in two different trials. I think. There was the one that I originally started with, which was injections into each of the small little tumors
Mhm.
that were on the leg. And then I'm not sure if the Mektovi was another clinical trial or
No,
not.
you were on a trial of Nivorella
Yeah.
hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that didn't do its job. So
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Um, but I will tell you that when I started treating melanoma, we had no FDA approvals. If you looked at the guidelines, it was sad. It was basically go find a clinical trial, literally. And because of clinical trials, we now have more than 15 FDA approved drugs. Patients have a lot more options,
Hmm.
but we're not at 100% cure rate.
Right.
We are at 50% cure rate, which when I started, it was a 0% cure rate. Um, and we need to get to 100%, and we're not going to stop. But that requires patients to join clinical trials.
Absolutely. So for patients listening that, are sort of at a crossroads and don't have a lot of options right now, they're not responding to the standard treatments. How should they think about clinical trials? And what should they talk to their doctor about?
Yeah, I think it's important for them in the modern era to empower themselves. Go online, look at clinicaltrials.gov.
Hmm.
Um, you know, uh, there are certain good links like Oncolink and the MRA website, for instance, that have a lot of information about specific clinical trials. And then ask your oncologist. Don't be shy, even if they say this is what I'm going to treat you with. The follow-up question should be like, and is there a clinical trial in addition to that?
Yeah, that's great because you just never know what it might offer. So you mentioned clinicaltrials.gov. People can also go to curemelanoma.org. We have a trial finder on our site, so feel free to take a look there as well. Um, let's see, Bob, do you have any final words for patients who might be facing a diagnosis like yours?
I I do. Um, the outcome was well worth the journey. I can assure you that. The journey wasn't all that bad. It was going into the unknown, that's for sure. But I think now there's much more that's known about the journey. Thanks to the folks at UPenn, that I think will make it much better for patients. And patients, there is nothing greater in this world than when you go back to your doctor and he starts to look at your leg and he starts giggling like a little kid. And, and he's feeling my leg and and he's going, it's gone, it's gone. And Teresa's looking at me and I'm looking at her like he's feeling my leg. I guess doctors are allowed to do that. I don't know. But I can't express how happy he was when he saw this leg. So that was,
I love.
It is a thrill. It is a thrill. The job is great. And it's people like Bob that are inspiring. Can I just ask Bob about firefighters
yeah.
and if you have any message about first
Yeah,
responders in general?
it's ironic that you mentioned that because last week we just buried our fire company's treasurer, who was a year older than me, from cancer. And for years and years and years in the fire service, uh, because of the way that firemen are, it was you just had to be tough. You had to live through it. Don't worry about it. Um, for years, we didn't wear breathing apparatus. If you wore a breathing apparatus at a car fire, you were, you know, a little sissy. But now that and one of the things that we teach into in the firefighting portion of our classes is washing your gear. We never did it. The first set of gear, new gear I ever had, I had it for 10 years or 15 years, and I don't think I ever washed it once. Now we're encouraging firefighters to wash their gear. Cancer is a real thing when it comes to firefighters. And I think more and more states are realizing that we're losing firefighters at a very high rate to cancer. And that the gear washing, the mandating of wearing breathing apparatus, the new tactics of being able to ventilate buildings faster than we have in the past to get the products of combustion out of the building quicker is something that we're all teaching now throughout the country.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Thank you for mentioning that. We've got, I don't know, 8 or 10 minutes left, and I have a couple of questions that came in through registration, if you gentlemen don't mind. Bob, I'm going to start with you. Um, one person that has been listening in said that they are starting treatment in about 2 months. Is there anything you would recommend that they do to prepare physically?
Yeah. Walk, eat well, drink a lot of water. I know everybody preaches about drinking water, but I'm telling you, drinking water just flushes you out and it makes you even feel healthier. But exercising and walking, getting yourself in good physical and emotional shape to do this. I'm telling you, the process isn't that bad.
That's
It's more
great.
scary than it is painful. It's not that bad. But I'm telling you, do it.
I love hearing that. And the recovery experience that you had after you were released from the hospital, how long would you say it took to get back to your daily routines?
I think to get completely back to where I could actually go back to the store and go back to teaching was probably 3 months
Okay.
till I really felt good. And because especially the teaching part is very physical, so very heavy, hard work.
Mm-hmm.
But to get back to that was probably 3 months. But
Yeah.
I felt better. I, I honestly made Dr. Amaravadi a deal. I hope I don't get anybody in trouble, but I was supposed to stay within an hour of UPenn for I think a month.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a bed and breakfast or we got a place to stay about a half an hour away. And I just it's not home.
Yeah.
Okay. And when I walked in this house, it was a world of difference. And I made him a deal. I told him that I hope the governor of Delaware isn't watching this, but I have some friends in the state police who told me that if anything goes bad, as long as I can make it to the hangar, they'll have me in University of Delaware in the helicopter in about 45 minutes. I said, okay,
Love it.
got it. So, but don't be afraid. Do it. I'm living, pardon the pun, living proof that it works. And uh, the other thing is the people that are around you, those people in the hospital, those people at UPenn made a world of difference in the treatment and the recovery. It was, yeah, I can't say enough about those folks.
I love it. I love it. Speaking of UPenn, Dr. Amaravati, a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Let's see, going back to a little bit more of the clinical component here. At what stage or point of treatment is TIL recommended?
Oh, that's a great question. So, we talked about the indication, which is second line, but what I've been talking with other physicians out in the
Mhm.
community about is if you start with a hard melanoma, what I mean by that is multiple tumors, they're growing pretty fast, and you're starting your first line treatment, you don't know if that treatment is going to work.
Yep.
So it is a reasonable thing to do to get seen at a TIL center by a TIL oncologist for evaluation, just to get your foot in the door, to know you, and they follow your scans along with your local oncologist. If you respond to the first line treatment, great. If you don't, we get you into TIL right away.
Mhm.
It's all about time to get the surgery done and to get you to the actual TIL infusion.
Yep. So it could in some situations be used in first line, perhaps.
Um, well, that's the clinical trial, but what I'm saying is that one of the problems that we encounter is getting referrals from the community too late.
Oh,
The
got it.
patient
Okay.
is already very weak, will not tolerate what Bob just described, and so because they've gone through two, three, four, five treatments, and they have huge tumors that are causing pain and debilitation, that's not the right time for TIL. It's actually
Yep.
earlier. We're not yet giving it first line in the commercial setting and the non-trial
Hmm.
setting, but we are trying to move it earlier, before you're very, very progressive, extensively.
Yep. So the key is ask early, investigate early
Yes,
to make sure that it stays an option as long
that's
as
right.
possible. Okay, so is there any information on the effectiveness of TILs for the rare melanomas like mucosal, acral, or uveal melanoma?
Yes, this is an emerging field. There were some acral and mucosal melanomas treated on the clinical trial that got the lifileucel, which is the TIL product, which is
Hmm.
commercially approved. Um, but there were a very small number. So
Okay.
since then, there have been single institution cohorts that have been described, and there is a response rate in these rare melanomas, even uveal melanoma.
That's really exciting.
So it's just a matter of, doing more focused clinical trials on
Hmm. Well, that's really exciting because those three rare melanoma subtypes are understudied and they really have people that have unmet needs in them. So it would be great if that really works out. Have you seen a difference in efficacy based on men or women? Anything like that?
We have not. That has been looked at.
Okay.
Of note, two-thirds of melanoma patients are men.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a skew towards men in general for
Yep.
melanoma. But there is nothing that, women, in my experience, have done just as well as men through the TIL procedure, and in some cases have done very well with the IL-2 even.
Right.
Yeah. So even
That's
though it
really
sounds
great.
hard, don't be turned off just because you're a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Bob, mentioned, staying in shape physically and of course mentally. Before you get to the stage of harvesting tills, do you have any recommendations for patients that you would advise?
No,
Oh, Bob, go ahead.
no, I don't know. I
Okay.
just
Yeah.
prepare yourself.
One of the things that we try to do is not be on a MEK inhibitor, not be on steroids, and not be on chemo right before the TIL harvest.
Okay.
That those are all three things that can stun the T cells that
Hmm.
you're trying to grow out. So if they get on the dish with some of those drugs in the dish, they may not grow out. The other thing we're trying to do is new research into how to pick the right tumor for surgery.
Mm.
And for this, we have a clinical trial that's going to open in a few months where we're using a new kind of PET scan.
Hmm.
It's called a CD8 PET scan, which will detect those killer T cells.
Mm.
And so we can actually see in the same patient, one tumor has high CD8 and one tumor has low. And if you didn't have that scan, you might pick the low one for the surgery, and then the TIL product doesn't grow out, or it grows out over 8 weeks or 12 weeks. And it's a real disappointment.
Wow, I love that you have all of that data to be able to use to make the best decisions. That's fantastic. So unless there are any other questions from the audience, Renee, I think that is a wrap on the questions that we received ahead of time.
We do have quite a few questions from the
Okay.
audience, which is amazing. So for Dr. Amaravadi, is there a universal number of T cells that must be reached in the harvesting and multiplying phase before continuing with treatment?
Right. So really, the lowest number possible is 1.8 billion, but really you're aiming for about 7.5 billion.
Awesome, thank you. And someone else asked if are there options for patients beyond TIL therapy? Because we're talking about it in the second or third line. So if a patient were to undergo TIL and it was not successful, are there more options perhaps?
Yeah, this is an area that needs more clinical trials. It's a new area, if you will. But there are ways to give other immunotherapy regimens like Opdualag, which is nivolumab, relatlimab, after, or even just single agent PD-1. There have been some anecdotal reports of treatments that didn't work before TIL working after. Um, and there's, of course, the clinical trials, which I highly recommend people joining if they're fit enough for those.
Awesome, thank you. And Bob, you had mentioned a few, things you had done maybe ahead of the TIL treatment to, give yourself the best chances. In the time after treatment, when you were out of the hospital and getting back into your daily life, what were the things that you were focusing on for the best, recovery? And what would you say other patients might want to think about at that time?
Uh, Trying to get my breathing back to normal again. That was a little different. Walking a lot helped with the breathing a lot, and just getting outside was a big deal. It was Aprilish, Mayish, and I'd been through so much stuff through that winter, and we were trying lots of stuff, and just being able to get outside and walk and feel the sunshine was a tremendous shot in the arm.
Awesome. Thank you. And could you just remind us, Bob, how long ago did you receive TIL and how long was the process overall, would you say?
It was March. I went in the hospital on March the 30th of 2025. And we began the process right away. I had the chemotherapy on the very next day that it was there, and it never stopped. I mean, it was every day. It was something. We rolled right through it. And it was when I left the hospital, I was weak, and I wanted to get out. I wanted to see the sunshine and get outside. And again, that was a tremendous plus for me to get out and just get back out and see things outside. It made me feel 1,000 times better.
Mhm. And we just had one more question come in for you, Bob. If you'd be willing to talk about if you had any mental side effects, so like brain fog or anything like that, that you could share with
I,
someone who might be getting TIL.
a little bit afterwards, I did. And it was more or less what I thought was the drugs and the chemotherapy and that stuff working its way out. But it was short-lived. It was once I got up and I got walking here in the house, and then I finally got outside. I finally felt strong enough that I could go outside. It was a matter of a week or so. Once I was able to go outside and walk around and walk down the road a ways and come back. I know this sounds silly, but if there's any firemen out there, going to your firehouse helps a lot to walk back in. And just fire stations have a funny smell to them of no other smell there is in the world. So just being able to go back in there and see that.
Awesome. I'll actually just throw it to Dr. Amaravadi too. Is that a side effect that you see common with TIL patients? Any sort of like mental fog or confusion?
Yes, it's an understudied side effect, the whole spectrum. One of the things that we are studying formally is the anxiety component, and when does it cross into a clinical diagnosis of anxiety? When do you need anxiety medications? When is there there are patients that get slight hallucinations, sometimes very matter of fact things that they know that they're not there. But we haven't seen anybody with permanent problems, which is the main thing. It is a temporary thing, but it's 2 to 3 months of a change in your body, basically.
Awesome. Thank you both. And thanks to everybody who answered questions and all the engagement. That is the end of the live Q&A.
Yeah. Oh, yes, Bob.
Bob?
If I may, before we leave, I have something I'd like to say, and this goes specifically out to the physicians who are out there who are listening. You have no doubt of what your actions and your thoughts and your professionalism, how far that reaches out into the world through your patients. I was fortunate to send something to Dr. Amaravadi around Christmas time. When I got out and I got back to working and riding fire trucks again, somewhere in October, we did a training at our fire station. And I trained our guys on what's known as interior work inside the car with tools and whatnot to free trap people inside the car when we worked inside the car, which is kind of rare. And normally that instance is very, very ugly. Back in October, we had a 16-year-old girl who, for some reason, felt it necessary to run 81 miles an hour and run off the road and hit a tree. The Monday night prior to her accident, we trained on interior work in the car, and that Thursday night, she hit the tree. Our guys went in there and cut her out. She was severely injured. They flew her to a level 1 trauma center, and she was in there for more than a month and a half or almost 2 months. A few days before Christmas, she came home. Her mother called my fire chief and said, I want you to know that she came home and she's home with us. She was still with a walker and was still in pretty bad shape, but she was home. And she said, wanted to call and thank the chief. And the chief said, well, you don't want to thank me. You want to thank Bob Ricker, because what he taught us the Monday night before the accident probably saved her life. She knew of me. She didn't really know me. She happened to find out my phone number and called me and wanted to thank me. And I told her, you don't have to thank me. The guy you want to thank is a guy by the name of Dr. Ravi Amaravadi. He's the guy that actually saved your daughter, not me. And I told her about my journey. And when we both got done crying, she thanked me, and I felt it necessary to send an email to Dr. Amaravadi, let him know that the physicians don't know how many people's lives they touch through what they do.
Amazing story. I got that text and I was dying. It's like you win awards in this job, you get promoted, all these titles, but these sorts of texts, these sorts of stories are what make us tick. And I really appreciate it, Bob. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're not the only one crying, Bob. I'm about to do the same thing. I love how you made it such a full circle story, and I agree with you. It's, paying it forward and thanking the people that came before us. That's really a beautiful thing. Um, I just want to thank everybody that joined us today, the people that asked us questions. I think this has been a very rich conversation. A few takeaways that, like, I jotted down in my little notebook is, if you think that you are a patient that may qualify for TIL, don't wait to ask. Talk to your physicians. I think it's always important to seek second opinions, right? Go to curemelanoma.org or clinicaltrials.gov to check out trials if you think that that might need to be something that you explore, and talk to your physicians about all of that. And stay healthy along the way, because you never know what's around the corner, right? Your solution might be there the next day, but you have to be healthy enough to receive it. So I'm sure there's 100 billion other tips that we could circle back to, but we're at the end of our time, and I want to thank Dr. Amaravadi and Bob for being just so authentic and personal and sharing everything with us. I think you're going to really continue to pay it forward with this webinar, because it's going to be there for people in perpetuity to check out on the MRA website. We're so grateful. I want to take this chance to thank Renee Orsioni, who was here making the webinar happen and helping to acquire the questions that we just reviewed, and she puts this together flawlessly every time. That's really about it, but do remember that this is the first full week of Melanoma Awareness Month, and you can go to curemelanoma.org and go to our blog section, and you can check out all of the wonderful activities, events, and educational opportunities to join in and learn a little bit more and pass it on. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Dana. Thanks, Renee.
All
Bye,
right.
Thank
See
everyone.
y'all.
you.
Thanks,
Bye,
Bob.
everyone. Thanks so much.
See y'all.
Bye.